Welcome to the Lava Academy podcast, your monthly dive into the world of volcanoes, lava, and the forces that shape our planet. In Reykjavík, Iceland, part of the crew behind Lava Show, the world's first live lava show where we remelt real lava and pour it out in front of a live audience. But this podcast is where we go deeper into the science, the stories, and the people behind the eruptions. Each month we'll bring you the latest volcano news along with conversations with a range of guests, from leading geologists and volcanologists to locals who've witnessed eruptions up close. We'll cover everything from the science of how volcanoes work and the tectonic forces shaping Iceland, to the ongoing activity in the Reykjanes Peninsula, historic eruptions, and the ways in which volcanic events impact people and communities. Whether you're a curious listener, a science enthusiast, or someone who just thinks lava is cool, and it is, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome back to the Lava Academy podcast. I am your host, Ian McKinnon, a former primary school teacher from Scotland, now playing with lava in Reykjavík for a living. Fun times. And I'm joined by my co-host, Jón Heiðar Ragnheiðarsson.
Yeah, the volcano man. I wish I could play with lava, but all I got is this nickname, Volcano Man, which I'm trying to get for myself. But we'll see how that will do. I have it on my business card at least. It's got to come from something, right?
We'll see if that gets any traction.
Yeah.
And actually, we've got some pretty exciting news this time around, because in the time since we actually recorded this episode, some interesting things happened.
Yeah, we got a new eruption.
A new eruption. So on the 16th of July, we had the latest eruption in the Sunnjúkageirarðin, a series of eruptions.
What a great pronunciation that was. It was a surprise.
It was, to an extent, a surprise. I mean, we did know that this was coming, but I think a lot of people got a little bit surprised by just how quickly it came. Well, not quickly necessarily. Compared to some of the previous ones, we had very short intervals between them. But a lot of the experts were weighing in with various predictions about when this was actually going to happen. Some of them were saying it was going to happen later on in the summer. Some were saying into the autumn. Some were saying it wasn't going to happen at all. And then on Wednesday, the 16th of July, at around about 4 o'clock in the morning, it did happen. There had been a big cluster of earthquakes, a little earthquake swarm that began around about midnight. And as that kind of escalated, it was pretty evident that things were going to kick off. And just before 4 o'clock in the morning, it did. New fissure opened up. This fissure was a little bit further north and east than some of the previous ones. That was expected because given the activity that happened on the 1st of April, when lava was kind of moving under the ground up towards the north and forming this kind of new channel under the surface, they were estimating that it would be likely that something could happen a little bit further north this time. That was indeed the case. The fissure, at its maximum length, it opened up to around about 2.5 kilometres long. And then a second fissure actually opened up, which was about 0.5 kilometre long, but very much in the same style as what had been going on before, and also reducing in power pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a short eruption, like many others in this series of eruptions that we had.
Yeah. So that's kind of the situation. That's eruption number 9 from Svartsengi in the last year and a half. And now we just wait and see what's going to happen next. Is that magma chamber going to fill back up again? Good chance it will.
Yeah, stay tuned. Who knows? I think this whole chain of events has shown us how dynamic and unpredictable the Reykjanes Peninsula is. But remember, these are just localized events that only affect, the immediate area where the eruption takes place.
And this is all stuff that actually we were talking about with our special guest for this episode. So rather than talk more about that, I think we'll just jump right over to that interview now.
Good idea.
Okay, so we're joined today by Shawn Willsey, a geology professor at the College of Southern Idaho in the United States, and he's gained quite a following with his fantastic YouTube channel, Geology Explained. And I think it's safe to say he's a big fan of Iceland too, because he keeps coming back. So Shawn, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you've been here several times now. What keeps pulling you back to Iceland?
Wow, the landscape of Iceland just is amazing, and I think I've been here several times, and every time I come, I learn something new. There's something different. Obviously, with this new phase of the eruptions changing, that makes it quite dynamic. But it's a dynamic landscape. It's a place where the glaciers, the rivers, the ocean, and of course the volcanoes and the earthquakes, all these tectonic processes and geologic processes are actively shaping this land, not just on geologic timescales, but even on human timescales, and that just really keeps me captivated.
So your first visit here was when?
2015 was the first year, or first time I came with my wife. We only came for it was a little travel deal, came for 4 days. Yeah. Just enough to get a flavor and get hooked.
Yeah, and you'll have seen quite a few changes in the landscape even in that time. Like what kind of changes have you seen, kind of just comparing then to now?
Yeah, well, even just today, I drove over by the Blue Lagoon and was looking out to the east towards where the line of craters are, and I was there last year, and it just looks different. The skyline is different, like the topographic features. And then as you get into near Grindavík, there's newer flows in places where there weren't flows previously, and so just within a year's time, that evolution and that change was pretty obvious.
So we have been seeing a lot of activity, obviously. We will be talking about the Reykjanes Peninsula more in the upcoming podcast, but you've been keeping a close eye on the activities since it started. So can you explain what is going on there for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, we have this active plate boundary that comes on to Iceland at the southwest tip of the Reykjanes Peninsula. It's an active plate margin, and up until late 2020, maybe even 2019, the main thing we'd seen in that area were, occasional earthquakes for the most part. But then that's changed since about late 2020 or so with uplift movement, inflation, the GPS sensors showing uplift, which was related to magma movement in the subsurface, which has led to these volcanic eruptions. And so we have this plate boundary that hasn't had eruptions for 800 years or so that is now producing volcanic eruptions. But it's always been an active plate boundary, and it's always been producing earthquakes at times. But the new wrinkle, I suppose, for people living here, of course, is the eruptions. And being this close to the urban areas, it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah. So that first eruption in 2021 at Fagradalsfjall, that was just watching that evolve over the time that it was erupting was quite fascinating, because that went on for 6 months and the behavior just kept on changing. Can you explain a little bit about what was happening and the kind of changes that we were observing?
Yeah, so it was a bit unprecedented because it was in a new area of Iceland where we hadn't seen eruptions for a long time, hundreds of years, centuries. And it was different types of behavior. It was sustained eruptions. I don't think we'd had, at least, in more recent times, that kind of low effusion rate that was protracted and lasted over such 6 months, like you said, over that long period of time. And also in a location that most people wouldn't have predicted. Even the volcanic systems that had been delineated and identified on the Reykjanes Peninsula, the Fagradalsfjall area wasn't really, if you were playing, the odds, that would be the least likely of the zones.
It wasn't really on anybody's radar.
No, not really. You had the Eldvarp system, all these other systems, the Krýsuvík, the other systems that look like they should be more active and have a history. Yeah,
more obvious choices.
And more of a regular recurrence interval. But Fagradalsfjall was sort of this zone in between two zones that was kind of like a secondary player that ended up being sort of like the first that really ushered in this new phase.
Did it teach us anything new about how magma is moving or the dynamics of that area?
That's really the big question we have is like, what is the plumbing system? How is the magma moving from deep levels in the earth up to the surface, and what's controlling that? And so with all our advances and all our technology, we still sometimes don't have a clear picture of what those pathways and conduits look like and how they're defined. It's not as easy as getting a 3D image of the subsurface. We can get some inferences, but getting a clear map, if you will, of what those pathways are, isn't there. And of course, it changes. So every time there's an earthquake on the Reykjanes, if it's magnitude 4 or 5, whatever, that can change the pathways. That can close off a pathway, open up a pathway, interconnect two regions that weren't connected before, and so it's just this constantly changing shift over time.
Yeah. And that particular set of eruptions there, I mean, we had 3 in successive years.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 following that initial one were in themselves quite different from 2021.
Yeah, so different locations slightly, shorter duration. I'd have to look at the numbers for how much the volume of magma that they erupted. But 2022, that was the first one I saw. I came out here for it, and I knew it was going to be quick. So the day it started, I made my plane ticket, and I was here within a week. And good thing, because I think it only lasted about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks. I think that one.
Yeah, pretty short-lived. But it changed location a little bit, which was kind of interesting. It wasn't coming up through the same vent or the same system. So again, it's always changing. I think the subsurface magma conduits are always shifting and changing. They can get clogged up. You can get to a point where the magma starts to solidify enough that it can't be broken easily, and it also is too stiff for magma to flow back through that conduit. So it has to make or find some new conduit.
Yeah, but by the time I finally managed to get out to actually visit the 2021 eruption, things had changed dramatically, because having gone from that kind of one very active vent, by that point it was kind of later on in the summer, it had entered that phase where it was long periods of nothing, and then all of a sudden jets coming fountaining up. It was
more sort of episodic kind of pulsating behavior. And we see that sometimes it's driven a lot by the gases, and so you can, depending on the viscosity, and there's just so many factors and variables, you can get that kind of behavior by keeping that magma in the subsurface and then building the pressure up until it fountains, or it becomes more of a dramatic eruption over time.
One phrase that is sometimes used, I don't like it very much. It's like that tourist eruption.
Right.
People that's sort of the category people put eruptions which are harmless, quote unquote. Well, what is your opinion on calling a eruption a tourist eruption?
Yeah, I think I think the intent is that it's a very, for the most part, a safe and friendly eruption, but it might lead a lot of people to believe that there's no inherent risks there and hazards. And I think in a place like Iceland, which has not a lot of search and rescue people, and definitely a lot more people wanting to go see the volcano than there are people to kind of keep people safe. Yeah. It definitely could probably be labeled something differently, because it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I remember. I think I may have talked about it in your previous podcast, but the Fagradalsfjall had eruption. It felt like this sort of strange, almost outdoor festival. And there were so many different kinds of people going up there. I remember.
Yeah, it was like a volcano pilgrimage.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about a pilgrimage, I remember nuns in their slippers. It was just hiking up there. It was, and a young man just wearing a T-shirt with his guitar, and it was just this sort of. Everybody was there. It felt like almost the volcano Woodstock or something.
Yeah, I think because the access was the access was actually kind of difficult in reality, in terms of the hike up there for most folks was pretty difficult. But it was seemingly the access seemed pretty simple, and it was close to the airport. You park your car in the parking lot, and then you just follow the masses up the trail. Yeah, and then it's kind of all down there in that bowl.
And don't forget, it was during COVID. and the authorities put up like a rope there. I can't remember it was the first or second eruption. It all sort of blends together. But I remember we called it the COVID rope because everybody was hanging onto the rope while they were climbing this, this slope, and everybody was touching the rope. And we're like, ugh, is that? Or people laughed about that.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe COVID had something to do with it in terms of just people have been like bottled up at home, and there'd been like some like level of repression, I suppose. And now here was this thing, and things had loosened up enough that here was a real destination, and here was a real event and a once in a lifetime opportunity, and people made the most of it, especially in Europe where you can get to Iceland pretty easily.
For sure.
And that just brought people in hordes out here to witness it. And what I really liked was, for the most part, you're sitting there on the ridge with a couple hundred people, your best friends, right? And you're looking down, at least when I was there, and looking down at the eruption taking place, and you can hear the sort of pulsating jet sound from the vent. But what I really appreciated was, for the most part, everyone was sort of in reverent awe. Like everyone, which I think is the right sort of approach and the right demeanor to have at one of these eruptions. Everyone was sort of like recognizing that this was something special, and they were treating it that way.
Yeah, so if we jump forward then to 2023, so the focus then and the activity shifts to Svartsengi, and all of a sudden we have got a much more impactful situation going on, certainly in terms of human impact. I remember that night of the 11th of November when the evacuation of Grindavík first took place. We were having a family dinner at my in-laws, and there was this real heavy mood in the air. My father-in-law, he was from Vestmannaeyjar. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of added a little extra in there because, having...
Just anxiety,
But we were all just sitting around getting the news as it was trickling in as to what was happening. And we were just waiting. We felt we were on the edge of something really big. Just because the activity, the seismic activity in the area was so unbelievably intense. What was actually happening there?
Yeah, so that was just an unreal experience, and I can't imagine for those that were in Grindavík in the area living through it. But essentially, that seismic swarm, for lack of a better term, and it really probably is that way, a series of magnitude 4 and 5, and smaller quakes, but felt quakes, strong quakes, were happening as that magma system had been accumulating beneath Svartsengi in the Blue Lagoon area. The earthquakes were basically the first signs of that magma, that pressurized magma, starting to work its way laterally and later up to the surface and breaking rock. So those earthquakes were basically the magma pushing on the rock, forcing their way through the rock and breaking the rock incrementally, and that's what those earthquakes
It's like
were.
reverse fracking.
Yeah, exactly. So it's breaking the rock, and it formed November 10th, 11th. That was the threshold, the sort of climax of the whole thing, at least seismically, and that magma moved out from Svartsengi off to the east and injected itself into a vertical, what we call a dike, basically a fin, if you will, of magma that was 15 kilometers long.
So I took a screenshot on my phone of the graph for the seismic activity for that day, and it's just when you compare it to like the normal graphs that we have. In fact, Jon, we'll put it up in the show notes for this one, so you can see the comparison between kind of a quote unquote normal day in Iceland compared to what was happening on that particular event, because it is just mind blowing. That map with all the little dots and the stars on it was just lit up like a Christmas tree. It was just incredible to see it.
Yeah, and for people, I think in Grindavík, the ones I've talked to, that was the scariest thing. Yeah. I think that was that's when it became really real. They'd maybe felt a few earthquakes before here and there, and they'd seen the GPS uplift measurements and all the data, but that's when just earthquakes coming in rapid succession, shaking your house, and then ultimately causing actual surface cracks in the ground in Grindavík and serious damage to the community.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When we're seeing the kind of situation at play here now with, lava is like actively threatening key infrastructure, it really does kind of change the picture of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's the whole thing played out like a crazy disaster movie Hollywood script, if you think about it. I mean, it started with the earthquakes, and then the town got evacuated in a night, which is incredible. And they built defensive berms. There was actually like the town was, the Iceland, the country was fighting back to some degree. I mean, you could kind of sell it that way if you're trying to sell this as a movie plot. It happened right underneath or the number one tourist attraction in Iceland, and right, like you said, critical infrastructure, the power plant that provides hot water and electricity to all these homes. Like you couldn't, that's the drama was like real, and you couldn't have scripted it any better if you were trying to get a high drama kind of situation.
What I enjoyed that they were using water to cool down the lava as they did in the Western Islands. I thought that was a nice sort of, I'm not going to say throwback, but it was like reminded you of the previous drama in Western Islands in 1973. So we've had 8 eruptions in Svartsengi. I mean, do you dare to guess what's going to happen next? How is it looking?
I think we're going to continue. I think I'm a scientist that kind of goes with the data, and all the signs in the data continue to show this is going to continue. I know other scientists have made projections about, it's going to end by summer, and this is the last one. That's not where I would probably put my thoughts. I think until we see something different, we should expect more of the same. The influx rates might change a little bit. The timing between eruptions has changed. But in terms of just this area being volcanically active for the foreseeable future, I think we need to approach it in that light until we see some sort of shift. Yeah.
So the things we're just for our listeners, the things that we're looking for to kind of clue us in as to the situation. You mentioned ground deformation. So if you could kind of like explain that a little bit more, and then also maybe a couple of the other things that we're using to actually.
Yeah, so at this point we're looking at the ground deformation is key. So basically as magma is moving from this deeper storage zone to this shallower zone beneath the power plant and the Blue Lagoon, as magma moves into the voids and the spaces there, it's heating up the rock. The rock gets a little bit hotter and more elastic, and that magma occupies more volume, and so that causes the ground to rise. That's what we call inflation. So the area is kind of swelling like a balloon over time, over that region. And so watching that ground deformation has been real key, because it's risen steadily, and then it reaches some threshold, and then we get either an eruption, or the other thing we get is an intrusion, where the magma stays underground, moves into some new, finds fractures or makes its own space with earthquakes, and then that causes the magma body to deflate a little bit. So the GPS stations move down because the magma's moved out of that zone, at least partially.
And that's basically what we had happening on the 1st of April.
Yes, exactly. So the April 1st event was, I think, really interesting because we all expected a big eruption. The whole thing, the balloon was like filled to capacity and was ready to pop. And what we really got was, we got the major event was the intrusion, and the minor event was the eruption. So basically most of the magma movement and the event was magma moving from out of the storage zone into that dike, or creating maybe a second dike, and then a little bit of it dribbled out of a couple weak zones near Grindavík, but that lasted 6 hours or something, and then it was over.
And if that had been, if the volume of magma down there, if that had actually made its way up to where those fissures had opened, I mean, that would have been game over for Grindavík there.
Yeah, because it erupted south of the berm, or through the berm, and so it wouldn't have made a difference with those walls they put there. And so there's just so many variables we don't know in terms of like where's it going to erupt next. And we all thought it was going to erupt right there between the two hills, Sýlingarfjall and Stóra Stókfjall. Those looked like the most, because that's where we'd seen most of the eruptions before. And it ended up being mostly an intrusion that actually went further to the northeast, closer to Vogar and the highway. And we just had a little bit of that lava dribble out, which was a huge blessing for Grindavík.
Yeah, I remember that day as well. As we were seeing because you could see the quakes moving further and further and further north, and we were like, "Whoa, is it going to like pop out on the road? What's going to happen here?"
Yeah, and so many unknowns. So even as scientists, we don't know in that moment. All we can do is track the data. We can see the earthquakes. We can see the deformation. But there's really no way to know for sure where if the magma is going to make its way to the surface at all, and exactly where. And those are kind of the variables, and those are important things, right? Knowing if it erupts further to the northeast, Grindavík's probably okay, but maybe not so much for Vogar and some of the highway. But yeah.
I hear people talking about, possibly moving further west as well into that kind of Eldvar area.
Yeah, I haven't seen any data for. I know that's.
I don't know what they're basing it on. But
I would love to know what the basis is for that. I've heard that from not just just the general public, but even scientists. And there is a row of craters there, but there's row craters everywhere. And until we see data that it's shifting that way, there's no reason to believe it's not going to take advantage of those pathways it's already created.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, like you said, 800 years since the Reykjanes Peninsula went off for the last time, had a sustained period of eruptions. What is the potential for eruption? How big is the system? What can it do?
So it's hard to say because we have very limited data. All we know is that we have, across the Reykjanes Peninsula, we have these seemingly separate systems.
I like that you said seemingly.
Well, we divided them up geographically. Like, here's a row of volcanoes, and then you move over, and there's another one and another one, and there is some thoughts about maybe it's all one, or maybe it's not six or whatever we count it as, and maybe it's
because the lava that's coming up in Svartsengi right now, correct me if I'm wrong, is broadly pretty much identical to that of Fagradalsfjall.
Yeah, so it's the same. We've done the geochem on it and the geochemistry on those lavas, and it's coming from the same source. It seems to me
it's like fingers on a hand. It's like
right. So why did the Fagradalsfjall conduits and those pathways? Why did those not persist, and why did it shift? And you have to also factor in that we have still, in between all these eruptions, we have earthquakes, and we have this divergent plate boundary where the plates are spreading apart, and so we're
constant flux,
constantly opening up pathways or closing pathways, and there's just all these variables that we just really can't get a handle on. Yeah.
But in terms of you keep hearing these terms like a new volcanic era and stuff. Could we be in this for the long haul? And what kind of duration and impact might we be looking at?
Certainly if you look at the volcanic history on the Reykjanes, it looks that way because it's very clear that there have been 2 or 3 periods that seem to impact all the systems more or less during that same period. And those periods might be a couple hundred years. Now, that doesn't mean that there's volcanoes erupting lava at the surface every day for centuries. What that means is you have intermittent volcanic activity that lasts cumulatively for maybe a century or two. It's bad statistics, it's bad math to say, well, we had 2 of these or 3 of these episodes like this, and so that means this 4th one or this 3rd one is going to be the same way. But it certainly looks a lot like that. But I would probably hesitate to say we're in the Reykjanes has woken up and we're in a new era. I'd probably pump the brakes on that and let's get a decade under our belt. Let's let a few more years go by and not just 4.
But even a decade, obviously not in geological timescales, but a decade from a human timescale is significant.
And we're almost halfway there, right? So you could argue that and we've had eruptions every year since 2021.
Yeah. So how well do you think people here in Iceland are prepared, and more so the infrastructure, are prepared for some kind of long-term episode?
I don't think it's an Iceland thing. It's human nature. We sometimes recognize hazards, but it's sometimes not until it's facing us a little more bluntly that we actually do things about it. I think Iceland's done a tremendous job handling everything that's happened over the last 4 or 5 years. I can't. If this was in a lot of other places, a lot of other countries, it might have gone south and been a lot more messy. So I think they've done an exemplary job dealing with the hazard, not just in terms of mitigating the existing hazards and trying to get in front of those, but actually planning ahead a little bit. That being said,
in as much as you can.
That being said, now they're recognizing that a good part of the big urban area around the capital has, areas that, are sitting on lava flows that aren't that old and sitting on volcanic systems that with fingers of lava that have reached there in the past and could reach there again in the future. And
yeah, we saw that recently in the news here, and I saw you were mentioning it in your channel as well.
Yeah.
That they're actively now talking about potential for lava flows creeping close to,
which is good, because now the hazard is not just this theoretical abstract concept that might happen. Now it's something that very likely could happen.
Yeah.
And what they do with that, I mean, I'm not going to really speculate. I know they'll probably do the best they can, but does that mean that there's a 0% chance of risk or damage? No. Like, you live on a volcanic island.
Yeah. I from a local perspective, I mean, we have always known that Reykjavík or Reykjanes Peninsula is on a volcanic area. At the end of the day, it's a choice to live here, and you just monitor things. And we have a excellent team of geologists who are constantly looking at this stuff. So, I mean,
you're in good hands.
Yeah. As far as
but it's the scientists that look at the data and they make recommendations to the public officials who really call the shots. And if that communication's flowing well and there's good cooperation, then you usually get a good outcome.
Yeah.
And if the public is informed as well, but it's when there's disconnects in that continuum that things can go south.
Yeah, I remember just as a kid, we always, Icelanders are very well aware where they live. So I remember as a kid, it was always like, oh, Reykjavik, oh yeah, it could, be impacted by lava, and, Hafnarfjörður or the suburbs, like places like Grindavík, they're obviously to a large degree built very close to or even on lava fields. So we know about this stuff, and it's like the weather. We know we live in a place where the weather can get really bad, but you just have to sort of be able to deal with it when it comes.
Yeah, and I think Icelanders are exceptionally good at dealing with whatever comes their way. So when the lava is, when we're about to get lava flows headed towards Grindavík, like, men and women go down there and work round the clock and put up the walls and do the things that they could. And even then it was like, well, this is the best we can do, and we hope it's enough. And so far, they've done a pretty good job, especially around the Blue Lagoon and the power plant.
It's really impressive what they did.
Yeah,
and you can see that on YouTube. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know any other instance any other community that's done that kind of lava flow mitigation on that kind of scale and on that kind of time frame. It's really remarkable.
The speed at which it was done is just astonishing.
Yeah, like they put up 10-meter walls, like,
well, I think
quickly.
I think so. Like I said, in 1973 we had this eruption in the Westman Islands, and that sort of galvanized everybody, or sort of hammered it into our DNA that something like that might happen again. So I think that actually the mindset that comes from that helps in these situations.
Yeah, it's a proactive approach about doing something before it happens versus a reactive approach. It's like, well, the town just got taken out by lava. Let's figure out what we're going to do now. It's a way to manage a hazard proactively, and it's not perfect. And some things you did have to be reactive. The pipeline got taken out last February 2024,
that was fun.
and that was awful. But they figured it out, and the power poles went down in one of the eruptions, and
they managed to get it all sorted again.
Yeah,
astonishingly.
No, and the roads
quickly.
are. I mean, I drove the roads today, and I'm like, wow, the roads are. Here we are, like the roads reestablished. Like this, it's very impressive. So. It's really, I think a lot of countries are probably looking at Iceland from around the world, other communities that have volcanic risks, and you guys are writing the book. You guys are providing a really good example of things to do, maybe sometimes things not to do, but but you guys are unfortunately the guinea pigs for dealing with this kind of hazard, and people are watching to see what works.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting towards an end of things here, but you're not just a geologist, you're an educator as well. The coverage that these eruptions have had, do you think it's kind of helped the public understanding of volcanoes, or has it in many ways complicated it? Like, do you think that the public maybe have misconceptions about what's actually going on?
I think the recent eruptions in Iceland and other places too, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it generates interest. The Iceland eruptions were probably, in my opinion, the most well documented and covered. You have webcams, live webcams on all those high points, and you could just sit there and from your computer in Bangladesh or wherever you are and like pull up these webcams and watch the whole thing unfold. So I think it's generated a lot of interest. There's a lot of people that pull up these webcams that are volcano watchers now, and they've gotten more interested in science and understanding how volcanoes work, which is great. And then on the flip side, we have media and social media and just some over sensationalism of the whole thing. And I know people in Iceland felt that, where it's like, hey, yeah, we're having a little hiccup here with this volcano, but it's affecting this tiny little this tiny little postage stamp of our country. It's not affecting the airport. It's not affecting the capital or most of our tourist sites. But the word that got out there, and then you get pictures of fountains of lava and some creative person making a title out of the story, and then it kind of turns into something else.
Yeah,
for sure.
Was that frustrating to you as a native Icelander?
Yeah. For sure, because we are in the travel industry. We are a lava show, so we thought, okay, this is going to help raise our profile a little bit. But we also got a lot of people asking us and our colleagues in the travel industry, is Iceland safe? And people would get messages from friends abroad saying, are you okay? It's like, yes, I'm fine. I'm just wondering.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm wondering what I should have for dinner tonight. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it was frustrating, but understandable. And you know how it is. Like, it's a little dramatic to say it. I won't call it a lie, but you know the phrasing that lie travels half around the world before the truth get a chance to get going. Yeah. So we had to correct a lot of things. So and also because the civil defense uses phrases like state of emergency.
Right.
But I understand.
Yeah, Grindavík evacuated.
Yeah, and or Iceland evacuated even, right. Or so, and a lot of this stuff gets conflated and confused.
I think it comes down to just education. If people understand, like you can show a picture of people hanging out in Reykjavík, and often the distance is this red glow of a volcano erupting, and it's fine, and everyone's safe, and it's okay. But we need to educate people on there's different types of volcanoes that are explosive and very hazardous, but these volcanoes are only hazardous to infrastructure. These are not the type of volcanoes where we should have loss of life. No.
Well, I want to recognize that there was one person that died in Grindavík.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah. So, right. and the whole fate of Grindavík is just very sad.
Right.
But yes, it didn't. I mean, the whole country wasn't affected, like you could infer from the media stories. And again, yes, that's frustrating, but it's understandable. And as you say, it's our job to educate.
Yeah.
And it's understandable because you've had in the past eruptions in Iceland that take place under huge glaciers, and that you get some very dramatic imagery. But that wasn't the case in Grindavík.
Different volcanoes. I think it comes back to in the States. High school students typically don't have to take geology. It's an elective, and I don't know what it's like in Iceland. But if we were a little better, maybe universally across the board about people being educated with how the Earth works and geology and different types of volcanoes, then they might be like, oh, okay, that's basaltic lava erupting in Iceland. It's coming out of a fissure eruption. That's an eruption, and there's some hazards there, but it's not going to wipe out a town in terms of loss of life or something like that.
So kind of jumping on the back of what you're just saying there, you just watched the lava show here a few minutes ago. So I'd be curious to hear what your reaction was to what you saw, and also what value do you think things like this, not just our own show here, but also other kind of volcano-related attractions are?
Yeah, I think, even before the lava show showed the main event, which was, the lava in the room, they did a video on Iceland and its volcanoes and showed different types of eruptive behaviors in the history of eruptions. I think the what I saw at the lava show was a great example of what people would see if they could be in front of a real lava flow, which is hard to get to, and you got to, what's the timing and what's the access? There's all sorts of variables there. There's obviously hazards, of course. There's gases, along with other things, but just the sensation of seeing the lava, feeling the heat. Maybe they smell something. They're obviously not touching it, so maybe not
hearing it.
Yeah, hearing it, right. So there are 4 out of the 5 senses, maybe hitting those things. I think it's exposure therapy, right? If we're exposing people to something, then it's not as scary, right? Okay, you're scared of snakes. I'm going to hold this snake. You come pet the snake's tail, and then maybe snakes aren't quite as scary. And so lava has this sort of mythical property where people fear it, or maybe they revere it or whatever, but they don't really. It's foreign to them. It's not part of their world. And so, by you guys providing just that little glimpse of here's in a controlled environment, here's the real deal that's happening just down the road on occasion when we have eruptions here, it exposes them to something, and it maybe helps them understand it a little bit better, which I think is the whole part of what you're trying to do here.
So you're heading, we mentioned Vestmannaeyjar. You're heading there for this week?
Yeah. I'm excited.
Having been there myself, it's an incredible place. And you lead field groups, to all sorts of different places. But within Iceland itself, if you were going to be taking one group to one place in Iceland to experience something, what would that be?
Is an eruption on the table, or is that off the
Potentially.
table? That's definitely like what, if I could.
That's the gold standard.
Yeah, those 2021 to 2023 eruptions, if I could clone those and take people to see that would definitely be high on the list. Other than that, though, gosh, there's so many good places because it's so different. You have the glaciers. What do I think is the best kind of showcase of Iceland geology? I think one of my favorite places is, I'd butcher the name if I said it, but it's up near Thingvellir. It's Laugarvatnshellir. It's the
Laugarvatnshellir.
Yeah, I probably butchered it, but it's where these people, this family lived in this little cave house.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Oh yes, yeah, and you had the video of that as well.
But that's not the attraction. It's the little canyon next to it. It has these beautiful
the pillow
lavas, and it's basically a cross section. You're actually seeing an excavated one of these subglacial volcanoes. I think
super cool.
I think the story of lava and ice or water on this landscape is probably the most compelling one. That basically, here's this little spot in the North Atlantic, and you've got the volcanoes and the lava and the ice vying over the real estate and kind of battling. And sometimes the lava wins out, and sometimes the volcanoes kind of quiet down and the ice grows.
It's like
back.
a cage fight.
Yeah, it is. It's like an MMA cage fight. And I find that just. Maybe it's a cool narrative, but I think it's just a really cool story because it's things you don't typically see. You can see basaltic lava flows in lots of places, but it's very rare that you can see them erupting and interacting with ice. And to be able to see that, I'm seeing, this happened not that long ago, a few thousand years ago, but I can see the interaction. I can see how this land formed, these big hills around Reykjavík, the topography. I can figure out how all that came to be by looking at some of those deposits.
So it sounds like you are pretty attached to Iceland.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. At this point, I'll be here once a year for indefinitely.
Let's just hit you with one more here before you go.
Sure.
So if there's one individual moment that's really stuck with you as a geologist, And that could be here in Iceland or elsewhere, but something that really had an impact on you that couldn't have been conveyed by any other medium than just being there. What would that be?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is going to sound like a total cop-out because we've been talking about it for the last 45 minutes. It's the first time I saw lava in Hawaii in front of me was like this. It was, I don't want to make it sound too cheesy, but it was almost like a spiritual experience to realize that as a geologist, I've learned that our planet initially started out as this basaltic lava crust, like, the very beginning of our planet's existence. Primordial Earth looked a lot like that. And so when I was standing in Hawaii on this like black lava field, no trees, no animals, just the wind blowing and just this lava rolling across this landscape, it was like going back in time and being like, wow, this is how it would have looked, billions of years ago.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, we've been talking a lot. Obviously, I like volcanoes and lava, but I mean, I did get teared up in the moment, which sounds kind of cheesy and silly, but it was like really kind of this,
not at all.
Formative
I
experience.
Get it.
Yeah. We get it. We have the lava show.
Right.
We get it.
Yeah, I'm talking to my lava brothers here. So,
yeah. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic chat. Really enjoyed this one. Maybe sometime we could have you back on, either in person or remotely. Join us again to get maybe a little bit more in depth on some stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to talk about anything.
So if people want to look you up online and consume your content, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Shawn Willsey, Geology Explained. And in addition to all this stuff I do with Iceland, I just post videos. Some are out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Could be, just when I travel and I see a cool geologic story that I can explain, I'll record it. I have some other videos that are just like more like lessons, sitting in front of the computer. Mm-hmm. But I'm just really passionate about bringing the Earth's stories and all the amazing things that I've been able to learn from others and on my own, and just conveying those to people as best I can, because I think the Earth is just a tremendous teacher and we should all be good students.
Well, thank you for conveying your own part of that story with us today. Thank you so much, Sean.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
So a massive, massive thank you to Sean for coming and joining us this month. That was an incredibly good interview. I really enjoyed having him on.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us. Really hope you're enjoying the show. If you do enjoy it, make sure you subscribe. Yeah, and we're on the socials as well. And Instagram, we're Lava Show Iceland. We're also on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and probably on some social I've forgotten about. We're also obviously on lavashow.com. And we hope to see you there. Yeah, so and we will have show notes up on lavashow.com as well, so make sure you check those out. And if you want to get in touch with us for any reason whatsoever, either telling us how great we are or how terrible we are, we'll accept both. You'll deal with ones that tell us that we're terrible. I'll take the compliments. So if you want to do that, you can get in touch with us at podcast@lavashow.com. Thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.